All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to unpack a pretty radical idea from a really fascinating text. The core concept that truth is a direct line to God. But most of us are living in a complex illusion that's designed to keep us in a state of pain. It's a big idea, so let's get into it.
So here's the game plan for our journey today. First, we'll break down this core battle between truth and illusion. Then, we'll get into why this illusion is so painful. After that, we'll look at the common roadblocks people hit when trying to find truth. And then, we'll reveal the one path the author says actually works. And finally, we'll wrap up by talking about what it really means to face yourself honestly. Okay, let's jump into our first section, truth versus illusion. According to this author, this isn't just a philosophical idea. It's the most fundamental choice we make, and it shapes literally everything about our lives. And this slide really lays out the stakes. It's pretty black and white. The way this philosophy sees it, every single thing we experience pushes us down one of two paths. You've got the path of truth, which leads to God and to joy, and then you have the path of illusion, which leads to what's called the demon and to pain. There's really no middle ground here.
So, why does it seem like suffering is the default setting for so many people? That's what we're exploring next in Section 2, The Pain of Illusion. Now, this is a huge claim, right? The author just comes right out and says it. The entire world is covered in a veil of illusion, and literally every single one of us is living inside it. That's a pretty intense starting point. So, what do they even mean by illusion? We're not talking about magic tricks or seeing things that aren't there. It's a state of being, that constant undercurrent of worry, pain, anxiety, sorrow, and fear. And here's the kicker. All that suffering comes from one thing, mistaking these illusions for what's real. Okay, so if we're all stuck in this illusion, how in the world do we get out? Well, before we get to the answer, Section 3 looks at all the common traps, all the paths that look promising, but according to the author, just lead you deeper into the maze. And here's where it gets really challenging for a lot of us. This slide lists pretty much all the usual places we go for wisdom. Scriptures, gurus, and teachers, our own logic, the internet, our parents, even our deeply held beliefs and ideals. The author's point is that all of these are actually misleading because they're all external systems created by humans. And that leads us to this incredibly bold statement. All human concepts are shackles. The idea here is that the more you try to learn truth from the outside world, the more you're just building a prison of ideas around yourself, brick by brick. So if all those external roads are dead ends, where does that leave us? Well, that brings us to Section 4. It turns out the only path forward is to listen to your inner feelings. The author basically says, stop looking out there. The answer is in here. Which, of course, begs the million-dollar question. If it's not in books, it's not on the internet, and it's not from our teachers, then where in the heck is truth? I love this analogy the author uses. It's like trying to describe the taste of durian or stinky tofu. You can read 1,000 articles about it, watch 100 videos, but you will never, ever know the truth of that taste until you actually experience it for yourself. It's direct, it's personal. And that right there is the punchline, the central thesis of this whole thing. The only guide you can ever truly rely on is your own authentic inner feeling. It's like a compass. When you feel joy, you're pointing toward truth. When you feel pain, you're pointing toward illusion. It's that simple. Now, what if you're thinking, that's great, but I feel totally lost. I can't hear my inner feelings at all. For anyone in that boat, the author offers this kind of break glass in case of emergency guide. Step 1, let a higher power, whether you call it Buddha or God, live in your heart. Step 2, trust them. I mean, completely. And step 3, just follow your feelings, your gut, in everything you do. And that brings us to our last stop on this journey. And it's maybe the most critical piece of the puzzle, facing yourself truthfully. This is where it all comes back to personal responsibility. This is a tough one for a lot of people to swallow, but the text is crystal clear on this. Everything about you has nothing to do with others. According to this philosophy, the very instant you start blaming someone else for your pain or your problems, that's the telltale sign that you're living deep inside the illusion. And so, after all of that, we're left with this one simple but incredibly powerful question to ask ourselves. A question that really sums up this entire philosophy. Just check in with yourself, with your own inner feelings of joy or pain, and ask, are you living in the truth?